All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. Welcome to our
Recording in progress.
Learning in the Post-COVID World. How can emerging technologies help achieve universal access to quality education? My name is Samir Sharma, and I work as Senior Advisor for the International Telecommunications Union. And I would also be your MC for today. And I also lead the Connect to Recover initiative of ITU. Before we move on, I have a short housekeeping announcement on the use of Zoom for this webinar. First, that all the microphones will be muted by the IT team. Panelists will be unmuted when the microphones or the MC or the moderator recognizes them. Photos will be taken throughout the sessions. We kindly request the speakers to turn on their cameras during their sessions. You may use the chats to sharing your comments. We will take a few questions from the floor at the end. To kick off this webinar, we are very excited to show you our new video that we prepared recently on ITU Connect to Recover Global Initiative. So I would invite my colleague to please play this video for you.
1.6 billion children pushed out of school. 165 million people infected. 114 million jobs lost. Where do we go from here? How do we recover? The COVID-19 pandemic has taken a toll, severely affecting the future of education, healthcare, and jobs. But it has also proved that broadband connectivity and digital infrastructure are not just a necessity, but a new global imperative.
In partnership with the government of Japan and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, ITU's Connect to Recover initiative aims to strengthen national digital infrastructure ecosystems to help countries remain operational and resilient in times of major global crises.
Our midterm vision for Connect to Recover is to reinforce the digital infrastructure and ecosystem of beneficiary countries.
Through the Connect to Recover initiative, we aim to enhance global connectivity to leave no one behind in this digital age. Connect to Recover uses a framework to measure a country's internet resilience in three areas: critical infrastructure, market, and network, with an aim to help nations identify gaps and implement solutions that strengthen their ICT infrastructure and preparedness for facing future shocks. To ensure scalability and impact, C2R collaborates with other ITU global initiatives such as GIGA, Be Healthy, Be Mobile, and Decent Jobs and Digital Skills to help countries build back better, with a focus on education, healthcare, and jobs. Want to know more? Join us. Help us connect to recover.
And help us build back better with broadband.
Thank you very much. I hope you like our video, especially the message by our Director of BDT, Doreen Borgen-Martin, to build back better with broadband. So please join our initiative. Now, let me introduce Mr. Alex Wong, the Chief of a Special Initiative at ITUD, and invite him to take the floor to welcome you all and officially start the session. Alex, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Samir. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all colleagues. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for joining us the entire week of Emerging Technology Week. But in particular today, we look forward to providing you more background on two ITU initiatives, the Connect to Recover, as well as GIGA. And today, specifically, we will explore the role of emerging technologies that they have in the role of learning in the post-COVID world and accelerating digital transformation in the least developed countries, the landlocked developing countries, and the small island developing states. Unfortunately, now it's been over a year since the onset of the global COVID pandemic. Globally, the ICT industry has proved to be essential in reducing the negative impacts of the crisis, considering that an enormous range of social and economic activities have shifted from face-to-face to online in such a short period of time. The two initiatives that I've mentioned, Connect to Recover and GIGA, has as its rationale and the realization that the pandemic has taught us over the past year the importance of broadband and the role of ICTs. Yet, as many of you know, half of the planet, 3.7 billion people, remain offline. And lack of internet access is even more acute in the least developed countries, where only 19% of the population is connected. The COVID pandemic has also taken a toll in particularly the vulnerable populations and in the areas of education, healthcare, and jobs. And that's why in Connect to Recover, we focus on those areas in particular. And the GIGA initiative, of course, focuses specifically on education. The pandemic has also shown how connectivity, infrastructure, and emerging technologies can help countries be better prepared to withstand the crisis and also to ensure they have the necessary basic services for their survival. And so within the framework of the Emerging Technology Week, we and the two initiatives that I've mentioned, the Connect, Recover, and GIGA, are joining forces to highlight now how emerging technologies and national digital infrastructure ecosystems can help countries remain operational and resilient in times of major crises such as this, and in particular, how we can work together to improve the achievement of SDG 4 related to quality education. So today's objectives in this session are threefold. Raise awareness about Connect to Recover and GIGA as two examples of initiatives that are developing resilient infrastructure post-COVID for education, health, and job creation. Secondly, share insights and examples where emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, and satellite imagery are being used to help governments map and connect schools to the internet and to make sure we leave no student behind. And finally, to share challenges, opportunities, and lessons learned from the least developed countries, LLDCs, and SIDS, landlocked developing countries and the small island developing states, as well as their experiences in using emerging technologies to address educational challenges in the post-COVID situation. I would invite you to join the conversation using the chat function, ask questions, contribute your own experience, and engage in the Q&A sessions. Finally, I would like to just recognize and thank our partners on these initiatives, Japan and Saudi Arabia, who are supporting the Connect to Recover initiative, our partner UNICEF on the GIGA initiative, which has an ambition to connect every school to the internet, and Boston Consulting Group. And Michael is on the panel today as our knowledge partner in helping out specifically to think through how to create sustainable village connectivity operating models. So with that, let me thank you again for your participation. And I now hand over to my colleague, Samir Sharma, to kick off the rest of our program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex, so very much for your encouraging words. I now have the pleasure to introduce my colleague and also friend, Ms. Nisa Futai Purcell, the Regulator, Office of the Regulator Samoa, who will be the moderator for the session for today. Nisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Samir, and good morning, or should I say good day, good evening to everyone, all the participants from around the world that we have today. Now, I'm very happy to be moderating this session because this is my passion, and that is to help least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states in using emergency telecommunications during the times of disasters, including this pandemic. Now, for the session today, we have 5 panelists, and they are Mr. Samir Sharma, Senior Advisor for ITU, Ms. Shilpa Arora, she's the Data Scientist Office of the Global Innovation for UNICEF. We have Mr. Shivnesh Prasad, he's the Digital Development Specialist of the World Bank. Mr. L.B. Bester, Market Development Manager, Networks of Intelsats. And then we also have Mr. Michael Wilms. He's the Partner and Director for Telecommunication PCG. Their bios are already on the documents for this session, and so I don't need to read them out. So we're about to start, and I urge all the panelists to please stick to 5 minutes for your presentations in the interest of time. Okay, the topic of our session today is learning in a post-COVID world. How can emerging technologies help achieve universal access to quality education? Now, this topic is about COVID-19, which has taken a toll in the world, hitting particularly hard already vulnerable positions and populations in least developed countries, LDCs, SIDS, and LLDC in the areas of education, healthcare, and jobs. The pandemic has shown how connectivity, ICT infrastructure, and emerging technologies can help countries be better prepared to react to major global crises and to ensure their societies can continue learning, working, and accessing basic services for their survival. This first part of our session, we are going to focus on building resilience for future pandemics, how emerging technologies can help us advance the SDG 4 in a post-COVID world. And so let me first start with you, Samir. You lead ITU's Connect to Recover initiative. Can you tell us a bit about it and how assessing resilience, emerging technologies, policies, and regulations can help strengthen the digital infrastructure and connectivity? Samir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Nisa, so very much for this kind introduction. As we all know that we have witnessed unprecedented humanitarian crisis in terms of this COVID pandemic, which has affected almost all sectors of the societies. And in particular, the greatest impact have been felt in three specific areas: education, jobs, and healthcare. If you look at the education, 2.2 billion children and young people are unconnected. And because of this pandemic, which has impacted 91% of the students worldwide, around 1.6 billion of children and the young people. If you look at the jobs market, more than 114 million people have lost their jobs, and the impact is higher for women as well as for the young workers. If you look at the healthcare, the recent statement of the Secretary General of United Nations has confirmed that more than 4 million people have died because of the pandemic, affecting more than 165 million of people world over. And with the recent release of the ITU's econometric models and the report, we have seen that the fixed broadband had a higher economic impact for the developed countries, and the fixed broadband penetration with the countries with the low fixed broadband penetration, mobile broadband technologies have taken over and is becoming preeminent technology for driving economic growth, thereby highlighting the urgency of universal digital connectivity. Next slide. So with this intent in mind, last year in September 2020, ITU started the global initiative Connect to Recover with the focus on building back better with the broadband, identifying key pillars of education, healthcare, and jobs where we think that the ITU can make the greatest impact in the recovery efforts with the objective of reinforcing, re-strengthening digital infrastructure for digital ecosystem for the countries. And this initiative focuses on three outcomes. First is countries' internet and resilience assessment, developing national ICT strategies, and projects for quick wins. As you would see that this initiative is up and running in almost all the regions of the ITU, we like to acknowledge our gratitude for MIC Japan and Saudi Arabia, which are our funding partners. Just very briefly introducing the methodology that we are following. There's a 5-stage, 5-phase methodology. First, the global methodology, which uniformly would carry out the assessment and the bottlenecks and the gaps identified in the areas of policies and to respond and mitigate consequences of COVID-19. Once it is done, we will carry out the assessment at the country level for digital and internet resilience assessment. And based on the gaps identified, we focus on streamlining and developing ICT strategies to ensure digital infrastructure and ecosystems adequately support recovery efforts. And then we would like to see some of the tests for the pilots, testing some of the technological solutions, focusing on education, healthcare, and jobs. And depending upon the further partnerships and the resources, we will carry out further deep dive studies on education, healthcare, and job creation. Let me just give you very briefly about the outcome of the first global methodology that we are coming out. In fact, you would see this report coming out at the end of this month itself on the connectivity gaps and strengthening resilience in the new normal. Just let me share with you a couple of key findings of the report in 3 areas. First is on the data, resiliency, and on the policy. The report observes that the quality of available broadband data is incomplete overall and worse in the places where it is needed the most, because data is the backbone for resilience as well as informed policy decision making. And ITU is in a unique position to convene various stakeholders forum to develop new data collection methodologies and visualizations, such as we have the coverage maps with the transmission broadband maps. And this pandemic has taught us that countries' broadband networks cannot be viewed as resilient if significant portions of the population cannot access to the internet at home. For example, there's problems of electricity access. And also, it is important for the regulators and the governments to review their national broadband plans or to develop their national strategies. Next slide, please. So what we are going to do in this, as a part of this report, uniformly, we will carry out the assessment under level phase 2 and phase 3 to collect the data and then carry out resilience studies for the network operators for critical infrastructure and the market resilience, national digital strategies under the pillar areas of job, healthcare, and education. And finally, I'm very happy to share with you that this initiative is up and running on the ground. In Rwanda, we are providing connectivity to the 10 schools. In Haiti, we are Tech in Community program, providing ICT connectivity to disadvantaged communities. And in Armenia and Kazakhstan, CIS region, this initiative is going to take shape. OECS in America region and broadband transmission map in Arab regions. Finally, to conclude, I just wanted to highlight that whether in the access, first mile or last mile, all the available technological solutions and options, this project provides opportunity for private sectors and all the providers to actually test those emerging new technologies that you will see and listen from all these partners. So with that, thank you very much for your participation, and we invite you to join ITU initiative on Connect to Recover to build back better with the broadband. With that, thank you so very much. Over to you, Nisa.
Lisa, you're on mute. Lisa, you're on mute.
Thank you very much, Samir. You've set the stage very nicely for our session. So now let me move to Shilpa, who is the scientist at UNICEF. Shilpa, can you tell us a little bit about how emerging technologies are helping deliver online education, specifically through the work that you are doing with GIGA, the partnership between UNICEF and ITU to connect every school on the planet? And also please tell us about the challenges and opportunities that you see in implementing these technologies in a post-COVID world. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I'll give you an overview of some of the technologies that we're using in GIGA, primarily focused on mapping schools and their connectivity information. So next slide, please. I'll first show you So as the GIGA's main initiative is to connect every student in every school to the internet. To achieve that, one of the primary things that we need is to know where these schools are, how many schools that there are in the world, where are they located, what's the connectivity status, and also what's the standard of the connectivity that do they get. And unfortunately, this information doesn't exist in the world in a very easy fashion. So to get that information, first, what we have developed is a platform called projectconnect.org, where you can see all the schools. We are expecting estimated around 6 million schools, and we're about to map around 1 million schools. And you can see all of those schools and their connectivity status on this platform. You can drill down up to exact location of every school and see what is their connectivity status, where they're located, and you can also see it's changing every day. So this is like the one primary initiative so that every government, partners and service providers can regularly monitor the connectivity of every school. Next slide. Now, as I spoke about that, the primary, need is to know where these schools are. Unfortunately, not every government know where their schools are located, and to do data collection on ground, it's pretty expensive. It's a lot of time inaccurate as well, and in the COVID, it's even difficult to do data collection on ground, right? So what we thought about is an alternative approach. We used machine learning and deep learning to identify where these schools are. So we built a deep learning model based on the satellite imagery. We did this with our partner DevSeed, where we used the real location of schools and also our on-ground mappers to map and label schools and not schools using satellite imagery. And then we built a deep learning model and that can now be used to find out the exact location or detect or predict the exact location of schools in a lot of countries. So this is an example of Colombia, where with 89% we could estimate that. And this is a model that is running for a bunch of countries. This is just not used to predict or find out new schools that are not mapped. This is also used to validate the schools that are provided by the government and other sources. So this is an example of how machine learning and AI could be used in an automated fashion. Next slide, please. So now, once we know where the schools are for these alternative approaches, the next main thing is to know what's the connectivity there. And as GIGA is not like one of initiative, we want it to be a sustainable system, which it's self-sustaining in a way that every student gets internet on a regular basis. So we have to track and build a system that allows connectivity to be tracked on a daily basis. So we built this Chrome extension with one of our partners, Ericsson, where this web extension can be installed in any of the browser. And once it's just connected in a device, we can get the information of connectivity on a daily basis without any intervention needed by government or any administration whatsoever. Next slide. So using this particular Chrome extension, and we also have a web app to enable this. This is an example of how this was leveraged. So in Brazil, you can see on the Project Connect web app itself that every day we get information on the connectivity. And it's visible on the map, what's the connectivity, what's the Mbps speed that they're getting in each and every school. This model is just not to track, but also to make the entire system more accountable, and also if possible to build a system which is based on the service fees and other incentives of the service provider linked to the internet speed that they're getting. So that's another initiative that we took. Next slide, please. Now, as I said earlier, we're using machine learning and deep learning to detect the schools. Now, our model also gives us an estimate of how accurate that detection is. Now, the ones which are not super accurately detected, what we built was this gaming app for those cases where we can use crowdsourcing approaches with different people to validate if this is a school or not. So this is a simple web app that that anybody can use, and you can basically say based on the image, do you think it's a school or not? We build a machine learning model on top of it to estimate different crowdsource responses and say with what accuracy do we think it's a school or not. So this is the approach of combining, AI and human intelligence together, building a human in the loop system where we're using models to detect and we're using humans to validate. So that's another approach we took to get most accurate school information. So these are some of the examples of the technologies that we are working on every day, trying to improve them and build even more such initiatives. Just next slide. We're happy to take any questions and also suggestions on how to do even better work with these technologies. You can reach out to us and explore the work more on gigaconnect.org. Thank you so much. Happy to take questions at the end.
Thank you very much, Shilpa, for that excellent presentation and sharing your work with Giga, which is really amazing and can help LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS going forward. Now, let me turn to Mr. Shivnesh Prasad, the digital specialist at the World Bank. Now, Shiv, please tell us about emerging mobile technologies and how they can facilitate the digital transformation in the Pacific Islands. Shiv, you have the floor.
Vinaka Vakalevu Nisa. Bula Vinaka to all from the islands of Fiji. It's a pleasure for me to be with you all today as we discuss the digital innovations that are currently underway in the Pacific Islands. Next slide, please. The Pacific markets, although small, are quite dynamic and enjoy high penetration of ICT services. The ICT sector in most of the Pacific markets are deregulated and has competition. This is true for the bigger sized markets of Samoa, Vanuatu, and Fiji, where cost of accessing the internet tends to be among the cheapest in the region due to good competition. The region also has a number of submarine cable systems which provide robust and cost-effective international connectivity options. Now let's look at the key drivers. Governments in the region are the catalysts in regards to driving the digital transformation agenda. By digitizing citizen services, governments encourage the citizens to not only start using digital applications, but also helps to create volume to drive further demand. This would be a win-win situation where there is increase in accessibility of services and a corresponding decrease in the cost of accessing and maintaining services. The second key driver, in my opinion, is the appetite and preferences of the users. The population in the Pacific demands to be able to access applications and services with the same ease and quality as their peers in more developed parts of the world. They wish to purchase goods from online shopping platforms. They wish to do video chats without latency, attend online lectures to further their education without buffering. These consumer demands lead to a constant need for the service providers to innovate. Of course, there are challenges as well. The smallness of the market, the high cost of connectivity, and maintaining infrastructure have a significant impact on the operations, especially on sustaining operations in isolated and non-commercial markets. High costs of operations ultimately lead to higher cost of accessing services for the consumers. Also, the growth of the first generational users of internet in the region has implications related to cybersecurity, and these need to be managed through awareness and education. Next slide, please. The comparison on slide 3 is useful to illustrate the mobile broadband is key in the region, and markets where they are deemed affordable enjoy higher rates of penetration. This is a comparison between the mobile broadband and the fixed fiber network. Next slide, please. Slide 4 illustrates that 4G is the dominant technology across all established markets in the Pacific, and it is also a growing technology even in the smaller markets of Tuvalu and Kiribati. Next slide, please. So what is evident? We are seeing a significant growth in the use of digital tools in the financial services sector. For example, in Fiji, where it is estimated that close to 24 US million is transacted monthly on mobile money wallet platforms. Even the smaller markets such as Kiribati, online banking is used to facilitate transfer and payments, including payments of utility bills. Remittances services are now linked directly through most banks and mobile money wallet platforms. The growth of e-government applications to facilitate business registration, accessing taxation services and civil registrations, even elements of e-educations are being explored in the times of the pandemic to facilitate learnings at home. Samoa has deployed recently the Maua app, which is the first homegrown interoperable payment system and a critical component to boost local e-commerce. Similarly, a number of locally designed apps such as Bula Markets are providing Fijians with a range of online marketplace choices. Even in smaller islands, innovative entrepreneurs are using Facebook Markets to do business, and in some cases, not only domestically, but also internationally. So what are we seeing going forward? Reducing international connectivity gap, either through the use of submarine cables and or satellite to provide better redundancy and cost-effective solutions. Falling satellite costs also provide a viable option to connect remote and small population sites. Reaching the unconnected is not only to facilitate universal rights of access, including access to educational platform, but ultimately they will add to the market size and in turn create further uptake and demand for digital transformation. There would be consideration for cloud computing and technologies for data storage given the significant cost of investing and duplicating core facilities locally. Given the similar needs of the countries in the region, there may be an opportunity to explore the use of shared services to reduce development and ownership costs. Of course, this can be tweaked to be relevant to local applications. I would like to leave you the snapshot. Next slide, please. I would like to leave you with a snapshot of the digital tools that have been adopted by the Fijian government as part of its mitigation strategy during the pandemic. This includes an online portal for vaccination registration, a real-time dashboard of COVID active cases and locations, an online registration portal for government assistance, such as transfer payments and distribution of rations, online application and processing of passes for business operations, as well as increasing online presence for vast number of retailers. Finally, I would like to acknowledge the work that the World Bank and the ITU are doing in terms of sharing telecommunications data and best practices for telecommunications policies and regulation. We are also collaborating on the development of a joint open terrestrial fiber data standards and map, which would improve the availability of terrestrial fiber optic infrastructure, data in accessible and standard formats. Vinaka Vakalevu, thank you. I look forward to your questions and I hand it back to the moderator. Vinaka Nisa.
Vinaka Shivnesh, for your insightful intervention. Now, let me change gears a little bit and engage our audience more actively on the discussions. We have a poll for everybody. We have prepared for this session to measure your knowledge on the subject matter of today. Can I ask IS moderator, Luisa, to present the poll and explain how participants can take part, please?
All right, so dear participants, I'm going to launch the poll right now. And as you can see on your screen, you can see different questions. You can scroll down to see maybe the last one, and you can just click on, select the right answer for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So the first question for the poll is, how effective can emerging technology be for accelerating access to universal quality education? The choice of your answers are A, very effective, B, somewhat effective, C, not effective at all. I'll give you a few seconds to make your choice and answer the question. Okay, question 2. Has the COVID pandemic prompted your country to start implementing some of these technologies for increasing access to online learning? So your choice of answers are yes, that's A, B, no, C, do not know. I'll give you a few seconds. It's the same as what you're seeing on the screen. So, and then the last question is, what do you consider as the major challenge when trying to use these technologies for increasing access to online answers. And as you can see, the answers are A, cost, B, deployment, C, regulation, and D, lack of awareness. Let's give it a few seconds, and then IS moderator can bring up the results. All right, Luisa.
All right, you can see the results now.
This is excellent. Okay, so now it's very clear that universal access to quality education using technology is very, very effective. It's standing at 70%. The second one of somewhat effective is at 10%, and so on. Then we look at the second question, and yes, I'm really, really pleased to see that the countries, most countries, well, in fact, everyone that took this poll, most of them are answering that yes, the COVID pandemic has prompted the countries to implement some of these technologies for increasing access for online learning. And then can you bring up question 3, please? I can only see the results of question 1 and 2.
I scroll down to question 3. I can see it on my screen. I'm not sure. Maybe you need to scroll.
Oh, okay. Let me have a look.
Thanks.
All right. Wow. As I suspected, the cost is a major challenge. I can see that 40% have answered yes to cost being a barrier. And then that's followed by deployment, followed by closely by regulator and lack of awareness. So therefore, we have a lot of issues that we need to address. And it's very, very important that we provide awareness to our people, and then, of course, deployment. But as the poll results tonight, cost is a major challenge when it comes to using the technologies for increasing access to online learning. Now, I'm glad that to know that although this is a pandemic, but COVID-19 has prompted some countries to use technologies. And now we see that the main challenge remains to be the costs. So this is for all the countries and participants to think about after this session. Thank you very much to all of you who took part in this session, this interactive exercise. Thank you. Now, thank you, IS moderator. Thank you, Luisa. Now let me turn to our next speaker, Mr. L.B. Bester, Market Development Development Manager of Networks in Intelsat. You saw the poll results, LB. Can you talk a little bit about the potential of satellite technologies in addressing affordable connectivity, specifically for LDCs, LLDCs, and SITs, and in particular for achieving SDG 4 which is a universal access to quality education? Thank you. The floor is yours.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity, Nisha. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I'll be Bester from Intelsat. We're a global satellite operator. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with the company. We've got 50 plus satellites covering 99% of the inhabited globe. Can we go to the next slide, please? So what I want to talk about are there are 5 initiatives that we've, over the past 3 years, that we got involved with, deeply involved with. And in all 5 of these cases, it was specifically a Wi-Fi using a satellite backhaul. But we also do have projects in Uganda and likes where we're using deploying 2G or 3G or LTE with satellite backhaul service. Of course, the beauty of a satellite service is satellites already in the sky. The ground stations are already built, or the gateways, and it's a matter of getting someone to drive out, install the antenna, install the Wi-Fi router, and set up the network. And typically that can be done between 1 and 3 days per site. The other beauty of satellite, of course, is the broad coverage. So we can scale thousands of sites in the country and use the same data pool to service those sites. And Intelsat gets heavily involved in all these cases with funding some of these trials and proof of concept. So the first one, Rwanda Schools, a project we did with the Rwanda Education Department, together with our technology partner, Liquid Telecom in Rwanda. We connected 12 schools in rural areas of Rwanda where there's no alternative terrestrial connectivity options. So between October 2020 and April this year, we ran the pilot with the department. In that time, 8,500 students connected to the network. It was specifically set up in the IT classroom for each one of the schools. And in the surveys that we sent out to the teachers, the feedback was very, very positive. And in most cases, and well, in all cases, the service was used for online education, some administration, and then some social networking. The second project currently in deployment in Niger is Smart Villages project. There are 10 villages in, again, really, really deep rural Niger. In some of the cases, it takes the installation team, and I think it ties to the poll feedback. The deployment and installation we found is the most expensive component, specifically when we reach into deep rural areas. The team has to travel 3 days to get to one of the sites, and it's a pretty hostile area, so you don't want to leave people there too long. But about 10 sites, we made use of satellite imagery in this case, because all we had was the name of the site and GPS coordinates to satellite imagery to get an idea of the sort of the scale of the village, and sort of get the optimized network coverage, the Wi-Fi network coverage for those sites. We are currently working with the ITU to expand these services to include a caching server, which means that content will be able to be cached to these sites, and of course that will reduce the amount of traffic that needs to flow over the satellite network, because much of the content will be cached, and it can be updated at nighttime when the network is not too busy. Very exciting project was the project with the UNHCR in the Ampain refugee camp in Ghana. Between 2016 and 2019, we ran the pilot with the UNHCR, very, very closely working with the regional education officer for UNHCR in Western Africa. You can see in the photo on the left there, they set up a little classroom, or they call it the ICT center, and that center became the heart of education for the refugee camp. So people would have access to the internet at limited times, 2 or 3 hours a day per person. And also the schools would be brought through at certain times of the day or certain times of the week to make use of the network. I think the exciting outcome was the working with Coursera. Coursera made the course material available to the inhabitants of the refugee camp, and we had 280 certificates that were issued over that period of time. We got some verbatims. A lady by the name of Natasha, 28 years old, came into the refugee camp as a refugee with very little hope. and she walked out with a certificate in project management. Very excited to be able to achieve something under such conditions. Another gentleman in the camp, Jean-Marie, together with some of the inhabitants, started making soap. They sold on the market, and he eventually did a Coursera course in customer analysis to be able to understand what they should be providing and who they should be providing targeting. So good outcomes there. And then the other two is Coca-Cola Eco Centers project we did with Coca-Cola, of course, in Kenya, Tanzania, and in Rwanda. 5 each in those countries, and we found that the data showed that in most cases people would use the network, and that was a paid-for service, so they would get 330 megabytes of data for the price of a bottle of Coca-Cola. 330 mils of Coca-Cola is around about 30 US cents or 25 US cents, depending on the country. And people use it for job searches, and they would use it to submit their CV. So again, it proves to the value of IT specifically in the upliftment of people. And the Internet for All project in South Africa with the government, 5 sites, and some of those sites were pushing 450 users per day. So extremely well supported, and good data we got from each one of those projects. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Elby. Now, your presentation shows that development of ICT infrastructure has to be a combination of terrestrial cables and satellites. So it's land, sea, and air. Thank you very much. Now, let me turn to our next speaker.
Nisa, this is Samir. Can I just make a humble submission on behalf of some of the participants, if I may? There have been questions in terms of the cost of connectivity and affordability. And in particular, one of the questions is about, whether Intelsat can provide any economic support for connectivity beyond the project timeline. So maybe, Nisa, I hand it over to you. Thank you.
Sure, thank you very much. Okay, before the next speaker, the last question was specifically for Intelsat. So Elby, you have the floor. Just 1 minute.
Okay, so let's look at cost. I think that was the chief first question I picked up there. In the project post the pilot in Rwanda, working with Liquid Telecom, who's our service provider in the country, they are putting together a proposal that the capex cost per school equipment probably comes in around about $1,700 to $2,000. Installation is probably about $1,000 because it's not easy to get installation done in some of those sites. And then the monthly operational cost, the OPEX is somewhere around about $400 per month per school. Does that answer the question, Nisa?
That is good enough. If we have time, we'll have to go back and try and answer. I can see that there are around 25, 28 comments and also questions. So this is a very interesting session. Anyway, our next speaker is Mr. Michael Wilms, who is a partner and director for telecommunication BCG. I would like you to take us to the practical level. Can you share with us some examples of possible country operating models for school connectivity and how they are being carried out in the post-COVID world? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Happy to do that. And happy also to be working with the ITU and UNICEF to support GIGA in this very challenging time. If we could move to the next slide, please. So obviously, we all know this, right? A large part of the world is not connected, and that also applies to schools. And on the next slide, we've also shown how important it is that schools are connected. Can we move to the next slide, please? The more schools are connected to the internet, the better the education quality will be. And there's very clear proof of that, if you can see on the left-hand side of this. And also that in turn drives an increase in GDP. Secondly, if we can connect the schools, we'll also use the school as a hub for the connectivity for the remainder of the community. And therefore, it will be a substantial driver in closing the digital divide. If we move to the next slide, what we're trying to do is create a sustainable business model, as was laid out in the last question to Intelsat as well. There's substantial costs associated with connecting schools. I think, as we see later, we estimated about $8,000 per school per year, which is pretty close to the numbers we heard earlier. And what we need to ensure is that that can be funded on a sustainable basis. So what we've been looking at is what is the right combination of technology, cost aspect, funding structure, and then operational setup to make sure that these schools can be connected on an ongoing basis without relying on charity for every replacement cycle or the operational cost. If we move to the next slide, what we've done as part of Giga is actually set a very clear target for what meaningful connectivity for the school means. And we arrived at a headline target of 20 Mbits per school, which means that a number of technologies can actually serve that. And as you said in the intermezzo, I think we need a combination of technologies, 4G, microwave wireless, fiber, and satellite, to ensure that we can connect all schools with an affordable method, and also some technology which has some upgrade pathways as we move to the remainder of the decade. The way we look at funding is outlined on the next slide. Oh, sorry, actually not. So first we look at the cost. Sorry, can you move to that slide? So we've done some assessment of cost, and across the board to connect the school is $3,000 to $4,000, maybe $5,000, depending on the country. And in some countries, there will be cost to supply electricity on top if there's no electricity available at that school, which adds about $2,000 to $3,000 onto the numbers we have here. Translating that to a cost per student, which I think is very intuitive for everybody, we're looking at on average $15 per student that we will need to fund on an annual basis to make sure that we can connect this school. We'll move to the next slide, please. We are looking at various sources of where we can get this $15 a year. Obviously, ministries of education and other ongoing education funding is a critical part, but in many places will never be enough. The second part we're looking at is what can the community contribute further, especially if this school can act as a hub for connectivity, but potentially also electricity for the remainder of the community. There's something there, and we'll see what that comes at in the next slide. And then lastly, our vision would be longer term, we need to get to something which is commercially provided, because that's the best guarantee that this will be operated on an ongoing basis. But obviously, we need to ensure that the demand is there, that commercial operations are also viable there. Now we can move to the next slide. So obviously, there's a whole range of setups that we can set up, ranging from just contracts between governments and private enterprises to a lot of PPP concession setups, which we believe is the right way to go. One of the things we'll be doing in the coming months is actually lay out handbooks, which will be publicly available via the Giga website, on how you can set this up in practice to make sure that you can continue to operate this on an ongoing basis. Let me move to the next slide. Oh, that's already the end. I think what we've also done for specifically Rwanda is look at these costs specifically. And if we then look at what the community can actually fund, we end up with about 3/4, which can be funded by the community directly for connectivity and electricity, which means that the actual gap that we need to fund particularly in Rwanda, is actually quite doable and amounts to about $1,000, $1,500 per school. And I'm pretty sure we should be able to make that work with various subsidies and support from more developed countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Great insights in the models as you have explained. And we've come to the end of our presenters. Samir, I know we have a few minutes left. Now, would it be possible for our team, ITU team, to look at the questions and also comments and perhaps send it out to all participants or send it out with the summary of this session? Yeah,
Yes.
okay, that's great.
That's true. Maybe just one question. I think people are talking and there are very interesting discussions about economic feasibility as well as, technical feasibility. I tried to provide some of the quick references and answers, but we'll be more than happy to actually connect either to all these speakers or through Secretariat, through ITU. We'll be able to maybe share with you the outcome report that you would see from us, but happy to stand guided. However, Nisa, we have 4 minutes. Sharp at 00 hours, the session would close because we are running parallel sessions, as you are aware, for the technology week.
Yes, thank you very much. So, I would like to give, well, let me say my final word. And then I will give a minute for each of the speakers. But it's very clear that emergency telecommunication is very important in ensuring that our people are able to access online learning in times of disasters, especially during this time of the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, the Connect to Recover initiative of the ITU is very timely and relevant to help LDCs, LLDCs and SIDS address connectivity issues that can provide universal access to quality education and thereby achieving the SDG4. I believe that the goal of C2R is to do and is to assist every country, every developing country, especially LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS, have access to universal access for education because this access will contribute to a better living standards for all. Now, if I may start with Shiv, 1 minute closing remark, please.
Thank you very much, Nisa. I can sum it up in a sentence. I think while innovating and adapting to new connecting technologies has significantly reduced costs to access educational platforms in the region, affordability of these devices would remain a critical challenge, especially in a post-pandemic world where there are various competing needs. And that needs to be mitigated against if we were to optimize online education in the region. Thank you, Nisa.
Thank you very much, LP.
Back to you.
Thank you, Shiv.
I think Michael from BSG, I think the research points out to exactly what we see. It is possible to provide service in an affordable way to really deep, unconnected areas. There are a number of models that can be looked at. There is funding from the department. There is paid for service, and as I said, with the Coca-Cola project, we saw people were willing to pay the price of a bottle of Coca-Cola for 330 megabytes of data. So the alternative for them is to get on a taxi or a motorcycle and drive into town and go access the internet there. So I think the value of being connected where you live is immense, and it adds to the quality of people's lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Shilpa. Just quickly, please. We're just hit finishing time.
I think internet plays a very significant role, and the emerging technologies can help in the ways we haven't maybe thought before. So please, we love to hear as innovative solutions as we can, and as much new innovation and open source, specifically technologies that we can, as we try to build something that is built by everyone and get used by everyone. So I think that'll be great if everybody can contribute on that.
Thank you. And let's move on to Michael.
Yeah,
Just
thank
quickly.
you. Yeah, I'll keep it very quick. I think what today has shown is that with all of the new technologies, we should be able to find a pathway to connect every school and by extension, every community and every individual in a way that is long-term affordable and also sustainable. And that should materially forward the entire globe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, Samir?
Just a quick one. I think I'm very excited to see the part of this exciting discussion, to see that the digital infrastructure plays a very important role in providing the dots, especially for education, health, and job creation. And this resiliency, together we can do and make the world a better place by our partnership and making sure $428 billion of investment that is required for connecting every person on this earth. I think together we can make this world a better place.
Excellent. So finally, I would like to thank all the panelists for your excellent contribution, and also our distinguished online audience for joining this session. And I wish you well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nisa, for such a great moderation. I think we can just remotely just appreciate and clap for such a great moderation. And thank you all the participants and the speakers and giving us opportunity to discuss excellent questions. We'll come up with an outcome report and share with you. We really appreciate your time and interest. Once again, thank you all the speakers, ITU and Connect to Recover team is looking forward to seeing you once again. Thank you so very much. Have a wonderful evening and good weekend ahead. Enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Recording stopped. Bastian. This is Maite.
Hello, Maite. Is
Yes,
Bastian there? Okay.
he is connected.
Hello, this is Bastian here.
Okay,
So,
Bastian.
The session?
So I think the floor is yours. I don't know if your speakers are here.
yes, we're just waiting on Bilal for his opening remarks, and I think he's joining in a minute or two, so apologies for the delay. We should be starting then. I hope that's okay.
Okay, dear participants, if you can just bear with us with a few minutes. Thank you for your patience. The floor is yours, Bilal.
Greetings, dear colleagues, delegates,
Recording in
and
progress.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Fantastic. Okay, greetings and welcome. I'd like to welcome you to this webinar on artificial intelligence for health. To kick off this session, I would like to include a quote from Mahatma Gandhi. It is health that is the real wealth and not pieces of gold or silver. Living in the circumstances that the world is now facing with COVID-19 pandemic, the statement holds true now more than ever before. The advent of the fourth industrial revolution and the digital transformation has facilitated the integration of technology into various domains, including health. Furthermore, the advancements in data collection has brought about the emergence of artificial intelligence, or AI, which has altered the way many industries operate in the modern era. In this context, AI also has ushered in a new age of operational efficiencies and ensuring quality healthcare to aid medical professionals in clinical diagnosis. While AI holds the potential to bridge the gap between medical research and clinical practice, its introduction in the field of medicine is still at a nascent stage. To introduce the fundamental principles of AI and to bring its potential applications for medical as well as surgical practices to the center stage, the ITU WHO Focus Group on AI for Health stepped into the limelight in July 2018. Since its establishment, this focus group has been tapping into the current knowledge base on AI and exploring the challenges and future directions for leveraging AI as a transformative technology for patient care. In keeping with its scope, the focus group AI for Health capitalizes on the increasing volume of anonymized data that could be gathered through electronic health records. These data streams have the potential to form the basis for benchmarking AI models developed for a given task related to diagnosis, treatment, and prevention of a specific illness or disorder. The focus group AI for Health has over 20 active topic groups, each of which is dedicated to management of different diseases. The core theme being explored within one of the topic groups is that of the promising role played by AI in radiology, while delving into 1, the definitions of common terms, 2, the development and benchmarking of AI ecosystem for data collection and imaging, and 3, the challenges of clinical implementation. Advances in machine learning have also enabled the early detection, diagnosis, and self-management of diabetes through an automated process. This is being examined further through the topic group on diabetes, which elaborates on the relevant data sets for diabetes, pre-processing methods, feature extraction methods, along with AI-based identification, classification, and diagnosis. As recognized by the World Health Organization, health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Keeping this in mind, it is important to acknowledge that other risk scenarios related to conflict and biological hazards could also negatively affect human health. We live in unprecedented times with the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic. It has impacted not only health, but also dented the global economy and harmed food systems. In addition to a topic group on outbreak, the AI for Health focus group has also recently established an ad hoc group on digital technologies for COVID health emergency, which seeks to underscore various use cases relating to the use of digital technologies, including AI, to deal with ongoing COVID-19 pandemic in terms of COVID prevention, contact tracing, early detection, recovery, and rehabilitation. Other biological hazards which could impact health include those which affect food systems. One of the important factors which could affect crop yield is insect disasters. The prevalent method of pest identification is manual insect classification. which can be a time-consuming and expensive process. Recognizing this, the ITU WMO UNEP Focus Group on Artificial Intelligence for Natural Disaster Management seeks to explore how machine learning and neural networks could resolve the problem of multi-classification of insects and predict the location and density of insect swarms to reduce crop damage. Both focus groups, ventures I mentioned today, focus group on AI for health and focus group on AI for natural disaster management, are privileged to have other committed members from the UN system for their respective groups, working towards a common aim of ensuring healthy lives and promoting well-being as per Sustainable Development Goal number 3, while also dealing with the other biological disasters including the ongoing pandemic. With the hope that today's session takes us a little closer to understanding of biological hazards in the digital age, I wish you all a successful session ahead. Thank you. I guess we move over to our first speaker of the session. Please go ahead.
Hello, thank you so much. Thanks for that wonderful introduction, Bilal. It's really nice to see you again. My name's Naomi Lee. I'm a senior executive editor at The Lancet and also vice chair of one of the focus groups that we were just discussing, which is the AI for Health. I've got some slides to share and I'm going to put those up now. And there's always that awkward moment where I hope that you can all see them. So yeah, hoping that you can all see these slides and give you something to look at while we're talking. So one of the really interesting things about AI for Health is not only is there possibility, but how do we make sure that it's safe and that it works for all of the people that want to use it? When we think about AI for Health, one of the things that we have thought about within the focus group and all of the people taking part is what's the problem? And the problem is obviously health is an extremely high priority for all of us. Many people in the chat were saying the highest. But what do we do when there's inequality, inequity throughout the world? There's bias, but there's also a supply which is a demand which is greater than the supply of health professionals that we have to deliver, and also of the supplies. So could artificial intelligence be a tool that could help us use the resources that we have more efficiently, but also to help people attain health using a technology that we don't currently use? So we already know that there are not enough healthcare workers in the world to meet the demand, and this is particularly in regions of Asia and Africa. And there's a lot of excitement throughout the world as to whether or not AI could be used to kind of leapfrog countries which have particular issues around supply because they don't have some of the entrenched patterns of healthcare delivery that some of the other countries have. But the question that the focus group has been trying to ask is, well, could it? And if so, how do we know whether or not a tool is good enough for use in that circumstance? So there are so many opportunities where the AI solutions could work. Could they work for detection of a disease? Could it work with diagnosis? Could it work with medical decision making? If we can use machine learning algorithms and big data, particularly from electronic health records, but also from records that might be captured from vital registration or from the smartphone of the participants themselves. We know the internet and smartphones have spread to almost all the corners of the globe. So let me give you an example. If there was a situation where a person could test themselves or screen themselves for a cancer, so for example, a cervical cancer test or some kind of screening, and AI could be used in the interpretation of the results, then this is a way that perhaps diagnosis could be improved, but also treatment could be offered earlier to those who need it, and so could help with that important burden. But there are challenges. So we know that artificial intelligence tools at the moment are promising, but they're also relatively preliminary. And the evaluation of AI tools doesn't always mesh with the way that we would evaluate other tools for use in healthcare. So, for example, where tools are trained once and they're used for this linear deployment, when should they be evaluated? And what do we do in this situation, which is more the reality with AI, where tools are updated regularly, and so the algorithm or the data on which it trains or the code itself can be changed with much more regularity than a pharmaceutical intervention. So we need to think of a way that we can fit the current evaluation system to this rapidly changing tool. So what the focus group recognized is that this requires a joint effort from experts in diverse fields. So it can't be purely a medical field. It must incorporate research and academia. Also needs the input from regulators, ethics, from those in the technical AI and machine learning community, and of course, those in public health. And really, we could keep going on, many, many more. So the focus group was established in 2018 as a collaboration between ITU and the WHO, looking to address this challenge for evaluating AI for health. And to give credit to those two organizations, I think now we're relatively comfortable with this idea that tools need to be evaluated. But back in 2018, some of the ideas that the group was working on, such as benchmarking, were really quite innovative and novel. And obviously, they've become more and more and more appreciated as kind of really fundamental tenet to evaluating AI for health. So the group is an interface between many fields, between artificial intelligence, machine learning, medicine, public health, government, regulation, statistics, and ethics. So who is the group? This is a slim example, really, of the number of people that are involved with the group. But it's led by Thomas Wiegand from Fraunhofer, and there are a number of vice chairs, which is Manjula Singh, myself, Samir Pujari from the WHO, Shan Zhu, Stephen Ibaraki, and Ramesh Krishnamurthy, all trying to bring different areas of expertise to the group. But really, the strength of the focus group is the membership of experts throughout the globe. So I can't even do justice to the photo, but there are so many people, active, bright, enthusiastic, driven people who are members of the focus group and have really been key to advancing the work. And luckily, the group also has some really important stakeholders and supporters: the WHO, ITU, IANFI, IAP, IHF, AI for Good, World Health Summit, and philanthropists like Fondation Botnar, and also the IMDRF. So the focus group went before the pandemic, when it first began in 2018, we were able to hold both online and on-site workshops and meetings. And we were able to hold on-site meetings in a number of places, which was absolutely fantastic for gathering local input and expertise and really making the focus group a global work. So one of the most exciting things about being part of it is this pooling of knowledge, global knowledge and global experience. Unfortunately, we weren't able to meet in Singapore in 2020, and we've been online since then. But in a way, that's been able to decrease some of the barriers from the physical event, as I'm sure you've all found in your own work. So what the focus group's mandate is really, as I tried to open with, the idea that we do think most of the people working in the focus group believe in the potential of AI and the substantial improvements that it can offer for the public and clinical health. But we also acknowledge that we require evaluation and standardization in order to foster this safe use on a global scale, and that isn't a way to decrease the use that is possible, but it's actually a way to create a kind of supportive, enabling environment for people developing AI tools, for clinicians, for governments, and to pool resources, so we're not trying to do the same thing in many different places. The structure of the group is that we have both working groups and topic groups. And so the working groups have taken issues like data and AI solution, assessment methods, ethical considerations, regulatory considerations, clinical evaluation. But then there are also topic groups, so picking out different areas: cardiology, dermatology, falls. and the rationale behind this is that there are many pillars which are common across all of the different areas. So, for example, the regulatory considerations is obviously a very broad cross-cutting topic. However, what we recognized as the focus group was working is that each particular area had its own kind of nuances or strengths when it came to evaluation. And it was really appropriate for people in that community to take what they could from the horizontal groups like ethics and regulation and clinical evaluation, but also that they needed to be able to lead and to create their own methods of evaluation for those particular areas. So the aim of the working groups is not only to pull out those overarching themes, but to understand the best practices, to create the processes, to define ways to benchmark AI for health algorithms, to create reference documents for people in the field. So to bring together all of this knowledge and expertise, but also to make some recommendations for the way forward, because I think even as we write things, everybody recognizes that things are constantly changing, but there's also an opportunity for the group to kind of call out work that needs to be done and to galvanize people working in the field. So just to remind you about the topic groups, those looking at a specific health issue in the context of AI, bringing together all the evidence and case studies and using those to create a benchmark for AI models for a given task within a health topic. And they create topic description documents. One of these is the COVID health emergency, which is coordinated by Anna Riviera Cinnamond and also by Shan Zhu. And they've collected effective AI tools which are leveraged throughout the epidemic emergency. And this is a really exciting topic group. I've talked to you a little bit about the overarching themes, ethics, regulatory considerations, clinical evaluations, and the way that the output from these groups are documents which are being iteratively updated, they're available, but we're also working really hard to produce some more definitive versions of record, and I'll tell you in a moment where we're up to with those. So just in the interest of time, I'm going to talk to you about a few of the particular things I wanted to mention. So one is the Open Code Initiative. So the Open Code Initiative is developing software tools for data acquisition, for data storage, for annotation, all of the tools that you would require to benchmark and evaluate tools. And it involves developers, regulators, and medical professions. And it's looking to create a universal tool which is applicable across borders. So this will be a fantastic resource for people who are working and want to do benchmarking, either nationally or on locally or on a more global scale. This collaboration has 40 contributors, and they have a work stream and structure of the core package, data storage, data annotation, and each person working in that area. But as you've understood, all working together under the general guidance of the overarching topics and teams. So there's also a recognition of the importance of data, and that one of the main challenges for artificial intelligence everywhere, but particularly in low and middle income settings, can be data, the quality of data, the generalizability of the data. And so one of the things that the focus group is currently working on is coordinating compilation of data in the regional settings and looking at how federated transfer learning can affect AI updates. So I mentioned a couple of the working groups to you. I just wanted to let you know that the working group for clinical evaluation has a draft or a version of record draft document in preparation, as does the working group clinical evaluation. And we hope that these will be ready towards the end of the year. And we also have been involved with the ethics group, which published last week. So if this hyperlink doesn't work, I'll pop it in the chat once I finish talking. So you can have a look at this really, really excellent document on the ethics and governance of artificial intelligence for health. A couple of other things to look out for, which is that the focus group has had a number of excellent webinars, including some really renowned speakers, Regina Barzelay, Isaac Cohen, Jeremy Howard, and look out for more from challengers for the group. Please do get involved. We've been absolutely felt so lucky with all of the participants that we've had, but the group is always looking for more participants. So if you or anybody you know would be interested in joining the topic groups, the working groups, the ad hoc COVID group, the Open Code Initiative, there are lots of links here. And if the hyperlinks don't work for you, I'll put some of these in the chat so people can follow up. But thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation. So I think we're going to pass straight to the next speaker. If there are any questions, I can answer them in the chat. But I think, hi, Monique.
Hi, nice presentation. Does somebody at ITU have my presentation they can share?
Hi, yes, can you tell me again the name of the presentation?
So, yeah, my name is Monique Kuglitsch, and the presentation is called AI for Natural Disaster Management.
Okay, give me 1 second.
I think this is Bastian. I think the name of the file